a story worth hearing. Everyone has something that makes them, them. Join us as we discover the rich history of the everyday person around you. Watch People We Know and Stories We Don't exclusively on KingDavidNetwork.com/KDNTV. People We Know and Stories We Don't is lovingly dedicated by the network in memory of Sarah Chaya Bas Mendel Colbert. May she have an elevation in heaven. Mrs. Colbert, a blessed memory, was the secular principal of Yeshiva Beth Yehuda in Southfield, Michigan, and has touched the lives of hundreds of students, creating everlasting impacts upon them and their future generations. It is in her merit that we spread the beautiful stories of the everyday people and share them on King David Network, Judaism for your ears, heart, soul. Our guest today is considered one of the greatest scholars and most sought after speakers in the Jewish world, yet his message is for all people. Rabbi Simon Jacobson is the author of the best-selling book Toward a Meaningful Life and founding dean of the Meaningful Life Center. Welcome, Rabbi Jacobson. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to. I want to wish everyone a very good New Year, Roshana Tova, to you and your listening audience.
So, tell us your background. Where are you from?
Well, both my parents are Russian-born immigrants that came to the United States after World War II, and they settled in Brooklyn and ultimately got married in Crown Heights. So I was born in 1956 in Crown Heights, USA, and where I still live till this day. I went through the Chabad system, but I consider myself a universalist, which means I speak to many different audiences and have many friends from all types of backgrounds, one extreme to the next. And that's the story. That's where I was born. And my father was a journalist. So though I grew up on one hand in a very observant, Torah observant home, but I also grew up in a very, I would say, open-minded, non-dogmatic home. So always exposed to ideas and different thoughts, and very much helped shape who I am today. So I feel like I'm somewhat of a bridge between, I would say, the Jewish and the spiritual and the secular. And I do that through teaching and writing and speaking. That's in a nutshell.
Okay. So, what made you write the book Toward a Meaningful Life?
Well, two things. First of all, growing up in this world, as I mentioned, we live in a pretty secular world where, 80% of the Jewish people are somewhat assimilated and don't really have background of what Judaism truly teaches. Most people's attitudes to Judaism is based on stereotypes and myths and ignorance. And I felt the need to present a more sophisticated and comprehensive, I would call it spiritual, psychological blueprint for life, that the Jewish people are here thousands of years, not just because we survived, but because we also had an ethos, value system, a deeply spiritual connection, and that has a message to all people of the world, to Jews and non-Jews. So I wrote a book that would present the Torah. I like to call it a blueprint for life. It's actually a statement from the Medrash, a blueprint, meaning it gives us direction, not just how to eat kosher or how to keep Shabbat or how to pray on Yom Kippur, but also how to live the most meaningful, moral, spiritual, emotionally healthy life. And so that was the first driving reason to write a book of that nature that would be true to the sources, meaning taken from Torah sources, but at the same time presented in a very accessible, relevant, and personally meaningful way. And the second reason was a more personal one. I was privileged for many years to work for the Lubavitcher Rebbe. My job was to do something very rare, which was on Shabbos and holidays when you can't take notes or record, and the Rebbe would speak, so it had to be memorized. I was one of the few that memorized it verbatim and was responsible for then publishing it. And after the Rebbe's passing in 1994, I felt a certain, actually, as a gift, a responsibility to share some of these teachings with, again, the larger world. So combining these two objectives is what really drove me to write the book. And thank God it was quite successful.
Wow. Did you ever have a yechidus with the Rebbe?
Yeah. As I said, I grew up in Crown Heights. So firstly, I went private audience with the Rebbe a few times with my father, my parents. And then after Bar Mitzvah, the custom was, at least till 1974, to actually go in for every birthday. So I went in, I would say, probably private yechidus to the Rebbe maybe 7, 8 times in my lifetime.
Wow.
But I was a young man. I was, and that, after 1974, they stopped that. So by then I was, in 74, I was 17 years old. So,
Wow. Um, yeah, I was born Gimel Kislev 94, so right after the Rebbe passed away.
oh, okay. Well, I was born in 1956. So I was here in the heyday. It was beautiful. What can I tell you? It was transformative, spiritually uplifting. The Rebbe was a living, I would say, force of electricity that infused, inspired myself and so many others. So yes, I have only powerful memories and that live on in me and very much drive what I do today due to this his message, his inspiration.
Um, your book has sold more than 400,000 copies worldwide. What does it mean to live a meaningful life?
Well, it's always good to put things into context. By contrast, there are 8 billion people on this planet, and many of them, if you ask them, "Why are you here? What's the purpose of your life? What's the meaning of your life?" Many do not have an answer because we're not educated to think that way. So we life, which I would say is more reactive, a life of survival. Things come our way. We look to make money, be successful, build families. A meaningful life means that you live a purpose-driven life, driven by a mission, like a business. No business can function without a mission statement. A meaningful life means you're living a life of purpose and mission. You have a mission in your life. And not just a general one, but one that's specific to you and your skills, that you're using your talents, your personality, your abilities to beat and to transform the little corner of the world in which you live. And by extension, to spread that as much as possible around you. So it's living a life of purpose, a deliberate life, where you're not just reacting, you're reacting, you're proactive, you take initiative. Wherever you go, you look to try to bring a little more, make it a better place than it was before you came there. That's in very general terms how I would define a meaningful life.
So, what does the Meaningful Life Center do?
Well, exactly that. Um, Sometimes we like to say our mission is to help you find your mission. And remember, to define a mission is not so simple. As I said, most of us, especially as adults, we wake up in the morning, we're rushing to go to work or whatever responsibilities we have. A mission driven life is knowing, why am I here? We say in the morning, for instance, the prayer, Moda Ani, thank you for returning my soul to me. What is your soul? What is it meant to do in this world? So Meaningful Life Center is dedicated to helping people find indispensable life skills that help them discover what is their mission and how to implement it. Just to give you an example, I just met a young woman, 18 years old, who's finished school and is really lost. And she says, I really don't know what to do. And I'm feeling adrift. And she's getting caught up in bad things as well. Because, when you're bored, you start looking for anything that will give you some excitement. And I said to her, I said, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? What's your passion? And she said to me, she loves music. I said, do you play an instrument? She said, no, I'd love to play an instrument. So I said, why don't you make a commitment this year to start playing an instrument? And it was a very simple suggestion, but it's like creating a focus in your life, which you really have a passion about. So we do this through programs online, many programs online, many articles. I do a lot of personal counseling and coaching, and thank God, reach quite a few people. I do 13 programs each week that reach of several 100,000 people a week.
Wow.
And essentially, yes, essentially offering a methodology of how to live a healthy life. Methodology. In other words, the word is we don't not to teach people what to think, but how to think in a healthy way, how to build a healthy relationship. What are the key components and ingredients in a true relationship? I mean, we live in a crisis of many sorts. We live in great times. We have a lot of prosperity, comforts, freedoms, but we also have a lot of lack of purpose, lack of direction, and with all the marketing and all the inundation of technology around us, it's hard to find your course, your direction. So that's what we try to do.
Very nice. Um, how did the pandemic change things for that?
Well, the pandemic was a real watershed moment. I remember it very vividly. We all know March 2020. It was just when it just really became serious. And what I found was that at the same time that there was so much panic and tragedy around me, many people died, many people became very sick, but there was also an unprecedented wake up call because suddenly all the security blankets and comfort zones, literally in every sector of our lives, was disrupted. Travel, vacation, education, schooling, work, I mean, entertainment, sports, whatever area we were in our lives, all the plans we were making suddenly got all disrupted. And as Warren Buffett puts it, that you don't know who's been swimming naked until the tide is out. When the tide is out, you start seeing that. In other words, when people are exposed and they're vulnerable, you start discovering parts of yourself that you can't escape to. This way, I remember many people are like, oh, tonight, Rabbi, I have to go to a restaurant. Tomorrow I'm traveling to Europe. And here the COVID suddenly stopped all of that. So people started looking inward. And for some, it was a very healthy time. For others, it was a very terrifying time. For myself, I could tell you my work exploded because the need, when people are vulnerable, they're receptive and to things that are more spiritual, more psychological, more emotional. And so the work I did really quadrupled, literally, both in the programs and the reach and so on. So it was a very interesting time and still having its effect because even though we're not in the heart of it, but it's changed many things. Many people are far more introspective. And I've focused my work on trying to harness that toward the right direction and use it as a wake-up call. Like we learn, Jewish teachings teach us that every disruption is an opportunity for a new birth, for a new growth, for a new paradigm. And I really believe I've seen it, and I really believe this is a great opportunity. So, for all its disruptions, it also allows, like they say, the crack allows the chicken to come out of the egg. So, these cracks that COVID exposed is really a great spiritual opportunity to create a new world order.
Um, Based on your studies of the Torah and faith wisdom, you outlined some keys to building healthy, lasting marriages. How can people keep the spark of intimacy alive, resolve conflicts, and find and maintain fulfilling relationships?
Okay, the $1 million question. um, I wish it was simple, but I will give a few key principles. The most important thing in a relationship is to know it's not about you and your needs. Many people will come to me, the therapists, read books, and they say, my needs are not being met. My needs are not being met. And even though a relationship should definitely fill your needs, but it can't be driven by your needs. A relationship is also about how much you give. And I think we need to focus on that, how much you bring to the table and how much love is not just about you, it's also what you bring to others and what you give. So In Hasidic thought, there's a concept called bittul. Bittul is a Hebrew word which approximately means modesty, humility, but above all, suspending yourself in the face of something greater than yourself. Look at every successful marriage and relationship. You'll see that there's an element in both parties that do not just focus on self, but on what is greater than myself, how the other person complements you. And having that as the center of your marriage, which is why a Jewish marriage is so much built on not just having a roof over your head, but having a kosher home, having Shabbat, Shabbos, Taurus Mishpacha, which is intimacy done in a pure and sacred way, and things that infuse the home with something more eternal than just the material success, not just a beautiful physical home, but a beautifully spiritual home. And that comes down to the love and the giving that I've just mentioned. It also comes down to how family members are all part of a bigger team. And above all, it's not driven by any one ego or one person's needs. It's driven by we're here to build a home for God. We're here to build a home that everyone who enters this home feels a higher presence. That's why a home is like compared to a mishkan, to the sanctuary, to a divine sanctuary. It's a place, in the words of the Torah, built for me a sanctuary, I shall reside among you. And the Talmud says that ish and isha, which is the Hebrew words for male and female, man and woman, both is the word ish, fire, but with the ish, you add the letter yud of the name of God, and with the isha, the letter hey. So fires can also create destruction, can also consume things. But when you add that bittul, that sense of humility, that sense of purpose, the chuppah, that above the husband and wife, above the home, is like a canopy that transcends them both, you bring the yudke, the godliness into it, the third partner, that creates a home that has an everlasting impact and has the ability to really be, in the words that we always bless a home in Jewish prayers, binyan adayad, an eternal edifice, eternity on earth. And it really comes down to the attitude of man and woman, the husband and wife, which then spills over to the other family members. That's in brief how I would describe it.
Okay. Um, what advice would you give someone who's divorced and trying to start anew?
Well, the first thing is not to let any setbacks from the past haunt you and depress you. Very often we feel like we're victims. The marriage didn't work out. So you get all like down, resigned. Is it going to work? To remember that there's Hashem, God is with you, and that there's always a bright future ahead. And even though in the past something may not have worked, you learn from it. So the first thing is to have that optimism, to know that if you do things right, you can build a beautiful life. A lot of people who were divorced are afraid to do it again. They're afraid I'll make a mistake or I'll marry the wrong person. So it's important to have that positive attitude and learn what has happened in the past. The second thing I would say is there's a certain experience that comes when you have gone through challenges, and those experiences can teach you tremendous things. It can teach you, as I said before, what doesn't work. It could teach you what the things that should work. And it also teaches you about strengths you may have not known you had before. They say, a person's like a tea bag. You don't know how strong you are until you put into hot water. So the hot water can bring out and elicit greater strengths. And frankly, I have seen people who are divorced and remarried and build beautiful homes and beautiful lives. It also has obviously you want to deal with whatever the past. Sometimes there are children from a previous marriage that has to be addressed. But I'm just talking in general, the attitude of how to realize. And remember, in Judaism, the most important thing is there's no such thing as damaged goods. We all always have hope. We always have a bright future. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. We always have the concept of doing things better, and there's always another possibility, more abilities to do great things in our lives, and never allow a previous setback to bring you down. That's critical in our minds and hearts to have that attitude.
Um, you work exclusively with people. extensively with people facing addiction, depression, and anxiety. How has the pandemic affected people struggling these ways, and what are some keys to recovery?
Well, just let me put it this way. Every addiction is really a dependency on something. Um, we call it sometimes attachment disorder. We all need attachment and connections in our lives. Just think of it this way: 9 months, every one of us spent in our mother's womb, completely nurtured, protected, submerged, fed, taken care of. Once we are born, we have hopefully healthy parents that continue to nurture us and love us, cuddle us. It's all called attachment. When a person is lacking attachment in their lives, they're going to find it somewhere. It's like a person who's very thirsty and they can't find water. What are they going to do? They're going to drink something that may not be so productive, that can be poisonous. So every form of addiction is really a misplaced attachment. Instead of getting attached to the right thing or the right person, you're getting attached to the wrong person or to the wrong behavior or to the wrong substance. You'll see addicts are very obsessive. They're very, very committed to finding their drug of choice, or alcohol, or gambling, or porn addiction, or whatever the addiction may be. So the key is not to eliminate the attachment, it's to redirect it towards something positive. I think during the pandemic, like I mentioned before, whenever the people are vulnerable, so they usually will turn even more, become more desperate to turn to something to relieve their pain, to relieve their loneliness. So in many ways, things exploded in the world of addictions, but it also became an opportunity, as I mentioned, to help people redirect it. And that's the key. Every person in this world deserves another chance. And when you see someone who's whatever form of addiction it may be, and remember, addiction takes on many forms. It's not always a drug, it's not always an object, it could be a behavior, it could be all kinds of different things, is to rechannel it and harness that towards positive ends. It's not easily said, it's easier said than done, but it could be done. I've seen it done. So the pandemic has served both as and as I said, an explosion of more complications, but also an opportunity that was unprecedented as well in helping people grow through this and heal.
Um, so, what is the Taurus view on addiction recovery?
What I just said, the Torah view on it is to realize, there's a concept in Judaism called Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah means to worship false God, an idol. What's the big sin of worshiping an idol? You're replacing God with another object, with a piece, with a stone, with wood, with the sun, with the moon, with serving with the stars. Drug addiction or alcohol addiction, any other function is also a form of Avodah Zarah. I'm not going to call it idolatry as with all the harshness. It's directing your energy, worshiping the wrong thing in your life. That instead of worshiping God, you're worshiping an object. You're worshiping substance. You're worshiping a behavior. So healing from that is like the concept of tshuva. What is tshuva? Tshuva means cleaning up your act, and tshuva also means return to who you really are. Return that passion, that commitment, instead of it going toward the wrong thing, directed toward the right thing. In other words, instead of being addicted to a substance, to alcohol, to a drug, to other behaviors, get addicted to something that is healthy, which is love of God, love of other human beings. So that's really the concept of healing in every possible way.
Mm-hmm. What does the Torah and faith wisdom tell us about how to navigate the upheaval we are experiencing in the world today?
Well, I mentioned upheaval and disruption. It can be compared. There's a concept in Hasidic thought. Chabad Hasidus talks about, I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate. The concept of yesh, ayin, yesh. that every time there needs to be a paradigm shift, a new reality, a birth, it always has to go through an upheaval or a disruption. Like I mentioned before, a chick to come out of the egg has to crack. A mother goes through birth pangs and pregnancy pains before giving birth to a new child. You have to melt a piece of gold to turn it into an ornament. A seed deteriorates in the ground before it turns into a tree. Creativity is a child of frustration. The list goes on and on. Everything that grows into something great needs to go to a state of upheaval. It's like you have to shed one layer of skin to assume a new layer of skin. And that could be a painful moment because you're going through change. Remember, if it wasn't real change, it wouldn't be that difficult. But you're going out of one comfort zone to achieve a new growth. So by definition, getting out of your comfort zone is going to be disruptive. So upheaval can be seen as just who needs it, or you can see it as the beginning of a new world order. Like the moon disappears every 29, 30 days, only to give birth to a new moon. We just experienced it, Rosh Hashanah, a new moon, a new year. So anything new is always going to be preceded by some form of upheaval. And we have to see it as such. Don't see it as an end in itself. See it as a stepping stone toward growth. So if there's any setback or any difficulty, remember the story is not over. It's continuing on, and you just have to see it through.
Um, you, what are some personal difficulties that you faced when writing the book and starting the Meaningful Life Center?
Well, whenever you start something new, like as I just said, always comes with difficulties. First of all, you have to get out of your comfort zone big time because when you write a book, you're allowing it to go to the public, and the public may like it or may not like it. So there's always that fear of failure or success. And same thing, you start an organization, you have to raise money, you have to go to people and justify why you're doing this. And it's very uncomfortable in many ways to ask for something. We like to be givers. To ask is not so easy, but it makes you a greater person. I always thought about it when I started raising money for the organization, Meaningful Life Center, that I established. That Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moshe Rabbeinu, after he received the Torah at Sinai from Hashem, Hashem turns him into a fundraiser. He says, now go and collect truma, vayichuli truma, collect donations of gold, silver, copper from all the people to build a mishkan, a migdash, va'asili migdash. So whenever you want to build something, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And I had to do so many times. I still do so. Because it's easier for me to just sit with a sefer, with a book and study or give a class. But when you build something, you have to put a lot of work into it. And in addition, writing a book, there's a lot of writer's block. There's always reason to procrastinate. So one of the ways I dealt with that was deadlines. It's very important to have deadlines and goals and answer to someone. If you're not accountable, it's very easy. If I didn't have that, I may still be writing the same book. Because you need to have a deadline to say, okay, here's the date when it needs to be ready. Here's the person I need to answer to. So these are some of the challenges that everyone goes through whenever they're building something. And you always will have in the beginning, people who will tell you can't do it. You have all the naysayers who are negative. It's important to then have your own inner confidence that you believe in yourself, as well as surround yourself with people that believe in you. Because any new thing is always going to face resistance. That's how it is. But I always love that statement in the Talmud, in the Gemara, that says, Azayas le'moitzi shamne atshekotchinese. A olive does not produce oil until you press it. You have to press it. Pressure creates the greatest things. If you don't have pressure, you don't have movement. You don't have growth. And the olive will never produce the wonderful olive oil if you don't squeeze it. So knowing that being squeezed and pressure is actually a good thing, not too much, but not too little either. And these are the things that you need to keep in mind whenever you're building something, whenever you're ready to start something new.
What would you say to someone who believes they found their meaningful life, but they haven't had any mazel in it?
Well, I would want to know more details, to be honest. But overall, what I would say is firstly, never give up. If something hasn't worked, try something else. Secondly, we don't even know what means mazel has worked. Maybe um, reminds me of that salesman. He was selling um, certain product and he knocked on different doors and everyone said no to him. Finally, the 20th door that he knocked on, and the person opened the door, said, "No, I don't want it." So he started laughing and was celebrating and said to her, "Thank you, thank you." She said, "Why are you thanking me?" I said, "No." He said, "Because I was trained that you'll get 1 in 20 sales. So you're the last 20th no. So I'm sure the next one will be a yes." In other words, even a setback, even when you think you're not having mazel, you never know. Maybe you learn something from the experience. Maybe it means that you need to do it a little different. So it's generally having that positive attitude and never giving up, persistence. Now, it's always good to have a mentor, a friend, a colleague, a mashpia, a mentor, someone you can speak to, because they can help also give a little more context and perspective. Sometimes when we are on our own, the Gemara says, Ein chavish mater satzme. A person who's tied up can't untie themselves. Sometimes you need someone there, that another person that gives you support, gives you another perspective on it, another opinion. So it keeps you also looking at things and not getting trapped, allowing yourself to find new ways, new opportunities. That would be my response.
Okay. Um, you say we should strive to be radical warriors for goodness and kindness. What does that mean?
They say there's an expression that there are three types of people: people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. I would like to say to you and to everyone listening, you have the power to make things happen. And that means that you have a power to be a leader in your own right. Now, this doesn't mean everyone's going to be the president of the United States or the head of the biggest organization. But in your own way, you have to always feel that you can make a difference. So I use the expression radical because it means that you shouldn't just do it passively or in a mediocre way, but really with great passion. You know, when you do something with passion and you fight for something, for goodness and kindness with passion, it changes the world. There's so many of us that are passive, so-called indifferent, apathetic. Even if we do something, it's not with our full energy. And what we need in this world are people who are going to fight all the way for good things. There's too much the indifference and too much indecisiveness. Like the guy that said to someone, he said, I used to think I'm indecisive. Now I'm not so sure. That's like a state that is like on the fence, halfway here, halfway there. So when you have we're coming from a pandemic, we're coming from other things that happen to us that sometimes are very challenging. The response has to be with even more strength to forge ahead. I mentioned before pressure. What does pressure do? Pressure creates resistance. And when there's resistance, your energy starts building up. Think of building a dam. Something is blocking. The dam causes the water to build up with even more pressure until it becomes a radical force for goodness and kindness. So actually, negative experiences can propel us to unbelievable great heights. The farther you want to shoot a bow and arrow, the further back you have to pull it. You have to draw back. The further back you go, the farther you can shoot. So that's the concept of really doing things with full energy, with full passion in a radical fashion.
Hmm. Um, how can people unclutter their souls to stop doing things that don't bring them fulfillment and make room for activities that will help them grow and flourish?
Okay. I see you're asking all the big questions of life. You expect me to answer them all, right?
Not all of them.
I'll try my best. I'll try my best. Um, you ever see when wires get tangled up? And it's very hard to untangle them. You get all frustrated. You start pulling from all directions. The key to untangle something is patience and looking for the loose ends that are easy to untangle and reserving the hardest part for last. So when your life is cluttered up, it's like tangles. It's vital to look for areas that are easier to untangle. And one of the ways of doing that is by creating space. I mentioned before the Moda Ani. I think it's one of the most powerful prayers and meditations that can help everybody in life. What is it saying? As soon as you wake up in the morning, before you get cluttered, as you put it, before you get entangled with all the details of your life, you make a statement. Thank you, Moda Ani lefanecha. Thank you for returning my soul to me. Basically stating my soul is the center of my life, like the hub, the mission. And everything I'm going to do today is an extension of my soul returning to me. So creating what they call today mindfulness, focus, space, is the opposite of clutter. When you see things all confused and chaotic and cluttered up, you need to find what is the main point here. So many details. How do I organize? So you'll see anyone that's a good organizer will come, just like you take a jigsaw puzzle. It's a bunch of scattered pieces. They're all over the place. You have no idea where they're going to go. But then you look for the picture. What picture do I need to create? You look at the cover of the jigsaw puzzle, say, that's what I need to create. Then you go to the pieces and you start fitting them in to what is the bigger picture here. So it's vital to have those priorities in place. You want to make sure your children have a good education. That's a central value. You want to have a beautiful spiritual life, beautiful home and relationship with your spouse. These are the pictures. And then you take the details and fit them in. Unfortunately, many of us, the details control our lives. You're so busy with the details, you forget, why am I doing this in the first place? So it's critical to step back. Every morning, a Modani is a perfect time to do so. Frankly, this time of year is a perfect time to do so. A new year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we're going into the new year. This is the perfect time to take stock. And instead of saying, I'm just a product or a victim of my circumstances and of my details, the other way around. What do I want to achieve? And then make sure the details are aligned to what you want to achieve. Not the other way around. You don't go shopping for food and they say, what am I going to do with the food? You say, no, I'm doing tonight a Shabbos dinner, or I'm making a Sheva brachas, or a wedding, or just regular dinner. What do I need for this dinner? And then you buy what you need. You don't first buy what you need, what you buy products, and then figure out what you're going to do with them. Everything always has to start with a mission, with a hub, with the core purpose of it. That's the key to uncluttering your life.
What does it mean to be a Jew today, and what are key lessons we can learn from the faith to better people and build a better world?
Well, a Jew always meant what the first Jew was all about, Abraham, Avram Avinu. What was Abraham? Abraham was a beacon, a pillar of light. He came to the world, and when he discovered God, he realized that we live in a very selfish world, and our job is to bring the message of selflessness, of kindness, of chesed, of virtue, of mitzvahs, of good deeds to everyone around. So that's essentially what a Jew is about. It's a bearer of light, a light unto the nations, to bring light into this dark world. When I say dark, it doesn't always mean physically dark, spiritually dark, emotionally dark, a hostile world where a lot of people live a world of survival of the fittest, very selfish life, and to bring selflessness, to bring godliness. That has always been our mission from the beginning of time. Today, I would say, we have more opportunities than ever because for so many years we were persecuted and we were expelled and we were killed and we were gassed. Rahman al-Islam, but today we live in a free world and we have the opportunities, especially with technology, For example, I commend you for this program you're doing. You're using technology to bring a message of light, of hope, of God, of goodness to others. So a Jew today has to see all these gifts and opportunities, which our grandparents did not merit. They were basically running for their lives, whether it was from Nazis, Yimach Shemam, or from communists, or from pogroms, or from inquisitions, or Cossacks, or crusaders, from the Egyptians, the Babylonians. I'm not going to go through the whole list. We have so many opportunities today. We shouldn't take it for granted. As a Jew, we should not be complacent or apathetic, but to use these gifts and opportunities to bring the message of Hashem, just as Avram Avinu did. A man who dedicated his home, his family, and all generations to do tzedakah and mishpat, kindness and justice and virtue in every possible way. Obviously in our own homes and communities, but even outside of that, at work, where we travel, the people we know. That's our job, is to transform this world into a divine home and ultimately bring Mashiach and Geula, which is a world that will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, a world which will be devoid of war and bloodshed and avarice and unhealthy relationships, but a world of peace and a world of harmony.
If there was one chapter from your book that you would recommend people read, what would that be?
Okay, now you stumped me. That's a good question. If it's a younger person, it would probably be the chapter Youth, which talks about the passion, the fire of a young person. For someone in relationships, I probably would say intimacy, love, those chapters. But also the chapter on redemption, the last chapter that talks about what we just discussed, how we elevate this world and make it a better place. Those would be the chapters. I'm sorry I said 3, I know. But there are so many different chapters. There's a chapter on fear and depression, fear and anxiety, and negative things. So it really depends where you are in your life. But that would be the ones I would probably recommend.
Okay.
If you talk about clutter, by the way, the clutter in your life, then I would recommend the chapter A Day of Life in, I think it's chapter 17.
Okay. What could people find on your website, meaningfullife.com?
They'll find on meaningfullife.com literally like a tool chest of different tools and resources and skills, life skills, how to live a more meaningful life. I think everybody, just like we need oxygen, we need meaning, purpose. So the website is filled with different methods, tools. When I say tools, I don't mean physical tools. There's articles, there's audio, video, and it's very easily organized by topic. If you want something on relationships, if you want something dealing with pain or suffering, with dealing with anxiety, how to deal with children, dealing with your own struggles, personal inspiration and personal growth. So really, whatever it is that you're looking for, you can find easily there. There are directories and by search. There's also a calendar of daily programs that we do for different audiences, literally every day, another program, which you can check out. Some are shorter, some a little longer. There are 5-minute ones, there are 10, 20-minute ones, there are 45-minute ones. And it's really filled with thousands and thousands of different resources that you can fully take advantage of. Meaningfullife.com, yes.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I would like to add this. I think it's important to state, to me, the most valuable thing of all in life is your life, my life. Each of us was given a gift, your soul. And you're like an indispensable musical note in a large cosmic symphony. You're absolutely needed. You have something unique to contribute that you and only you can contribute. And it's critical to sing that song, to express that inner beauty that you have inside you. Michelangelo, the great sculptor, was once asked, How do you sculpt those beautiful angels in the marble? And he said, I see the angel trapped in the marble, and I carved and carved and set the angels free. You have an angel inside you, much beauty, so much potential, and don't allow anyone to intimidate you or to force you to do something that you should not be doing, but rather to speak your voice and to be able to express your unique way of serving God, your unique way of contributing and playing your music. And that is, to me, the greatest gift, to be able to interact, the greatest dignity of a person's life, that indispensable, that I need you, you need me, we all need each other. Like I said, a symphony that needs all the different instruments and all the different musical notes. And that's why it's such an honor for me to be able to speak to you, to your audience, to all of people who are listening to this. And hopefully we all can pay it forward and spread that message, create that butterfly ripple effect that can have the power to change the world.
One last question. With with the new year starting, what is one thing that you recommend that we try to do this coming year?
Okay. There was a custom by the Chabad Rebbes that every year they would take upon themselves a new resolution. I would firstly suggest to you, to everyone listening, take upon something new that you haven't done before. It doesn't have to be something formidable or overwhelming. It could be an additional class. It could be to teach. It could be to commit to send out a weekly email to all your friends and social media of a kind word, a word of Torah, a word of inspiration, a kind word. But take upon something new. Why is that so powerful? Because when you do something you haven't done before, you shift the very consciousness of existence. You introduce something new into this world. And it's the best way to be a container to bring new blessings into your life. You know, they say insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So since we want something new in our lives, do something new, and you'll see that will generate something new. So that would be my suggestion. Find something in that area, like I just said, the area. To be more specific, I like to call it immerse your soul in a spiritual spa. Spa is SPA, study, prayer, action. Torah, avodah gemilas chasadim. Something in the cognitive, something you learn new, something you do with your emotions, your prayer, a new prayer, and action, a new good action. That's my suggestion.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Jacobson, for joining us on the show, People We Know and Stories We Don't, where we get to know the stories of the everyday people around us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Wishing you a Gemar Simatova and looking forward to getting to learn more from your website.
Thank you. Gmach to you and to your audience. And thank you for having me.
All right.